Good morning. It's day 10, and I learned a lesson yesterday about lighting, and that was that it can't be brighter behind me than it is in the same room I am, or it washes everything out. So, one lesson learned about video at least. So, yesterday I talked a little bit about my music journey to this point, and I thought today it might be good to just mention 3 of the lessons I've learned during that time. The first one is I learned a long time ago to fly by the seat of my pants when it was necessary. My dad's temperament is very much or at least it used to be, very much the very in the moment. And for all the years that we've been playing music together, to this day, if I'm at a venue where my dad has anything to do with what's going on musically, he will typically pull out songs that I haven't heard in 30 years. And I'm just supposed to remember them. And fortunately, about 98% of the time I do. But it taught me from the time I was probably 13, 14 years old, the value of being able to be instant, in season and out. And sometimes that 1 or 2%, when I can't remember, I just have to sort of be gracious and say, I'm sorry, I don't remember this one. A second lesson that I've learned in my music journey is that the gifts that you have will open doors for you. That same spontaneity that I had to learn to respond to from my dad, I found myself in a church setting many years ago where I was visiting a church. I think it was the first time I had ever been there. And they had a guest speaker. And at the end of the service, the senior pastor comes up and he just sort of off the cuff says, I want all the musicians in the audience to stand. And we did. And I looked around and there were probably about 25 people standing. So he actually started on the opposite side of the room from me and asked each individual what instrument they played. So there were the typical guitar, piano, drums, bass guitar. And by the time he got to me, he had been through over half of those people. And when he got to me and I said piano, he said, if I called you up here right now, could you play something? And I said, sure. So he summoned me to the platform and he continued talking and asking the different people what instruments they played, and left me sitting there playing behind him for 5-10 minutes before he turned to his music director and said, I want her. And I think about how many people would have just completely avoided that scenario. They probably would never have stood in the first place. But then to be able to say, yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I get butterflies, but those butterflies can also mean that you're excited about something. And then the third lesson that I want to talk about today is just the idea that if you struggle at all with the idea of being inadequate and not qualified, I want to talk about that because the church that I talked about yesterday that I literally auditioned for 3 weeks before they put me on as an interim, and then I had to continue to basically audition for 3 more months while I listened to other people audition. Even after I got the job, one of the other keyboard players was a classically trained musician. So he was one of those guys that could sit down with a classical piece of music and play it pretty much letter perfect sight reading. And that was incredibly intimidating to me. And I was getting accustomed to the idea of playing with an orchestra and a very large choir and playing for productions and all that sort of stuff. But probably after I'd been there 3 or 4 years, the music director hired yet another keyboardist, but this time he was a Berklee Music School graduate. And he was a writer and arranger and all this sort of stuff. And that was primarily his job, was to write orchestrations and arrangements. And I found myself for a period of time just really feeling intimidated. And I was sitting at the piano one day completely by myself in the room. And I'm going, God, I don't understand why I'm here. I'm surrounded by people whose education and ability is up here and I'm down here, and I just don't know why I'm here. And it was one of a couple of times in my life where the voice in my head that I can only describe as something that seemed like the audible voice of God said, "Is what I gave you any less?" And as I contemplated that, my answer was, no, it's just different. And I have found that that has translated into so many areas of my life. Places where I have felt intimidated or not qualified, or, oh my God, there are other people here that can do this way better than I can. And God Himself wants you to know He created you to be who you are. And it doesn't mean that everybody else is better. What He gave you may be different than all of them. But that's sort of the whole idea of being authentic and finding your voice. For me, finding my voice is learning to appreciate that I am unique. I am not going to be like every other musician. I'm not going to be like every other business coach or consultant. I'm different, and I'm okay with that. And I don't click with everybody I meet. I don't click with every client. I don't click with every business person. I am not friends with everybody. I enjoy people, but God made me unique, and my goal in this process is to learn to present my authentic self. I heard somebody last week make a statement: don't try to be original, don't try to be different, be authentic. Because when artists try to do something original, they make stupid choices. So I want to have wisdom and make smart choices. So signing off for day 10, I will see you tomorrow.